हम अपने दूसरे पैनल की तरफ बढ़ते हैं। 100 ईयर्स ऑन एयर, अ जेंडर पर्सपेक्टिव। सुनते हैं उन महिलाओं की आवाज़, ना सिर्फ इंडिया से बल्कि विदेश से, जिन्होंने अपनी आवाज़ से अपनी पहचान बनाई। इंक्लूसिविटी एंड डाइवर्सिटी का ख्याल रखते हुए हमने इस पैनल में मेल वॉइस का भी रिप्रेजेंटेशन दिया है। नाउ मे आई वेलकम आवर पैनलिस्ट मिस्टर अनुराग बत्रा, चेयरमैन एंड एडिटर इन चीफ BW Businessworld Group and founder Exchange for Media Group. Miss Nisha Narayanan, director and COO. Narayan, sorry, I'm so sorry. Nisha Narayan, director and COO, Red FM and Magic FM. Miss Gunjan Priya, AIR, and Miss Olya Booyar, head of radio ABU, and our panel moderator is Smita Sharma, independent multimedia journalist.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. सारे सो गए या खाने की सपने में खो गए? Good afternoon. It's fabulous to be back here at the Radio Festival. Thank you so much, Archana and the team of Radio Festival, the organizers, and here for a fabulous panel. I'm so glad the panel leads with men. So Anurag, Batra, of course, was the first to come on board and come on the stage here. आप लोगों ने अभी जो अपनी शुरुआती इस सेशन की वेलकम में शाहिदा बानो के बारे में सुना, और जाहिर सी बात है यहाँ जो लोग रेडियो को पसंद करते हैं, रेडियो के साथ बड़े हुए हैं, काफ़ी जो जेंजी हैं, जो मिलेनियल्स हैं, जरा हाथ करेंगे. हाउ मेनी जेंजीज इन द रूम? ओके, वाओ. एंड मिलेनियल्स ठीक है. द डायनासोर्स. So, of course, all of us have different interpretation of radio, different fondness for radio. But हम जब शाहिदा बानो को याद कर रहे हैं, we also should rewind a little bit to the Second World War. And उस वक्त हम लोगों ने देखा था कि how basically the first women war correspondents actually emerged. And the name that strikes out then would be the American radio journalist Betty Wason, who was reporting from Manchester area against the Nazis. Not in Manchester, sorry, she was in Prague in 1938, and then later on, of course, she was hired by Columbia Broadcasting System, which now you know as CBS News. But the interesting thing is that if you look at the memoirs and if you look at the notes there, even when she was based in Greece later on, the pioneering reporter was basically asked not to go on air. क्योंकि उनको कहा गया था कि your voice is not suited for radio. Most of the women correspondents or journalists were thought of as not fit to be on-air voices at that point in time. From there, if you look at the trajectory today, whether it's All India Radio, Urdu services, or even in Afghanistan, where in 2008, in fact, you had a radio in Kunduz that started up, which was called Sedika Sharzai. She started up Radio Roshni. She was battling a whole lot of challenges, terrorism, all kinds of taboos, to be able to operate and talk about women's issues. So हम जब रेडियो की पूरी evolution के बारे में बात करते हैं, to try and put a gendered frame to it, I have an excellent panel. And let me actually start with you, Anurag. If you could tell me, really, when you think about, you are somebody who understands the pulse of the news industry beyond television newsrooms. When you look at women in leadership positions today in the industry, how much of the leadership really lies with women in radio, in broadcasting industry? And I'm not talking about women as consumers. I'll talk about it later on. But women in leadership position, how do you see that having made a difference over the years?
Thank you, Smita. Kudos to Archana and her team for doing this year on year, and look at the quality and of the audience. So kudos to you. I hope radio has that kind of audience. It's a medium that is unique, so it needs. I'll come to, actually I was thinking that you can look at glass half full or half empty. Nisha leads the radio station. There are two other colleagues who lead radio stations. And I must say about leadership is gender neutral. I wrote a piece, my editorial colleague Noor, who's worked 21 years, when the new Lever CEO was announced in India, she wrote a piece saying, Lever's missed an opportunity to appoint Priya. And, I wrote a piece saying, we can't afford to be genderous. I mean, I coined a term called genderous. So I don't think we should look at any leadership role from the lens of gender. Having said that, Nisha is here. There is
That would be utopian to say that you don't look at it through the gender lens. But the fact that women are having to break the ice ceiling in every industry, and they have evolved. Even in the radio industry, they've had a long struggle. That's the reality, unfortunately.
So at least 3 of the top 10 radio CEOs in the country are women. 3, right? So again, you can say it is less, or you can say it is a good start, you know. But let me also talk about the larger representation of women on radio, which is the topic. See, women's programs over the years have been there, and since the time radio was introduced 100 years back, there are a number of programs which are women-centric, or issues that deal with women. And mostly these are in afternoon, because women traditionally would do a lot of household work, look after their homes, and then maybe have a respite in the afternoon. I'm giving a historical context. And radio is a local medium. I grew up in Old Gurgaon. I was not born in Gurgaon, but when I was 2 months old, my parents moved to Gurgaon. Not that I've grown up. Loss of air is no guarantee for growing up. For those who know me, I've not grown up. But I grew up in Gurgaon, and I can only say that really radio is a local medium, and the presenters would speak in language or dialect that the women in the area would engage with. The station covered their voices, so it would be Haryanvi in Rohtak or Gurgaon, Maithili on the Muzaffarpur station, Khasi on a Shillong station. Also, the radio as a medium has provided a space for women to be heard, both literally and figuratively, in a largely male-dominated public soundscape, at least 30, 40 years back, if not now. Also, radio bridged and connected and blurred the boundaries between the private and public spheres, and by doing so, spoke to women as housewives, workers, consumers, and citizens of a, equal rights society. And this phenomena was not just limited to India. This
Annurag,
happened
globally. What
globally.
I was just trying to get from you was that, of course, we'll talk about the different formats for women later on in a bit. But when it comes to more gendered leadership within the industry, does it change the prism from which programming is done in a mass media?
It could, women do understand women better. But I think women look at what their TG is. A leader will look at what the TG is, what is the differentiation, and then evolve programming. But if you take of leadership in programming itself, there are a lot of women. I think Tapas would be in minority, okay? My friend Sharad Bhatripad, Tapas, they would be in minority. Now you take the presenters, which are celebrities. There are a lot of radio jockeys who are really celebrities. You have Malshika Mendoza and Archana in Mumbai. You have Ginny and Divya in Delhi. You have Malvika in Bangalore. You have Shivankari in Chennai. And I can go on. I mean, these are some representative. So I've been appearing on, I'm not going to take, but on some people's radio shows who are women. So really, even if you take news, you come from the news domain. On radio, some of the best journalism have come from women. Women like Lais Doucette, Razia Iqbal, Geeta Gurumurthy. So I think leadership is not just about being a CEO, it is also about leading the quality of programming. So in that sense, there is enough leadership. Can it be more? Yes.
Okay, that's a good point and a fair point to start with. Nisha, let me bring that to you. For you also, moving up the industry, how much of struggle was it, or had the women, the names which were either on air or off air, made it relatively easier for you? And what is the conflict like for you as a woman wanting to have a more stronger gender perspective compared to, of course, the market dynamics that is always driving content?
Thank you, Archana, for inviting me. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I do agree with what Annurag said, saying that leadership is gender neutral. But having said that, if you're interviewing 2 people for the same position and both are equally talented, one a male and one a female, my inclination to hire the woman will always be higher for the fact, not only because she's a woman, but because the question on women by society is so strong on her talent, on her skill set, on her ability to perform, that the moment she gets that opportunity, she will put in that extra effort to prove the environment around her that she is best for that position. And I think that is the reason I will probably choose for a woman candidate in that position. Archana is a classic example. 7 years of the radio festival, right? I mean, don't call me biased, but I do feel that if there was a male who was probably doing the radio festival, would not have been so passionate or so aggressive as Archana. Even last night, I think we were both having a tiff over WhatsApp because I was not so sure whether I could make it to the panel. I think she fought tooth and nail and she ensured I'm sitting here and talking to you. That kind of a passion would not have been there had it been somebody else. So I think that women do go out of their way to prove that they can be better because the society has put so much of pressure on them and questioned their ability, and therefore they will never grab or miss grabbing the opportunity. I think that's probably how I would want to look at it.
I think, you know, that it's so inherently built now that you have to constantly prove, which may actually be a given for a male counterpart. Sania Mirza's clip has been doing the rounds on Brood, where she's saying that women are always trying to give it 100. Gunjan, coming to you, you know, what are you're a millennial, as you just mentioned. What are your really earliest memories of women shaping up radio transmissions, you know, and did any of them inspire you in particular?
Yeah, like as I remember my childhood, we used to listen to radio programs as directed by our, senior members of our family, कि सुबह सुबह एक बार सुनना है, अगर संडे है तो सुबह में भी सुनना है, दोपहर में भी सुनना है और रात में तो न्यूज़ सुन के ही सोना है. तो दिस वाज अ ट्रेडिशन कि सब लोग जैसे ही फ्री होते थे रेडियो के आगे बैठ जाते थे. तो मैं दरभंगा से बिलोंग करती हूँ और वहाँ वी यूज्ड टू हैव खटर काका का प्रोग्राम. सो इट वाज रिलेटेड टू एग्रीकल्चर बट एवरीबडी वाज लिसनिंग सो केयरफुली irrespective of their like which profession they belong to. और फिर वो बच्चों का जो प्रोग्राम होता था that was a extravaganza for us क्योंकि पढ़ना नहीं पड़ता था उस समय और हम मतलब ये भी pretend कर सकते थे कि हम तो रेडियो से प्रोग्राम सुन रहे हैं. Then singing, मतलब whatever song I remember from my childhood, I have learned it from All India Radio. And I never knew I will be working in All India Radio. So some of those stalwart of All India Radio जिनको मैंने बचपन में सुना था, and I came face to face with them, and then I got to know okay I have to work with them. चाहे ये musicians हो, राजन मिश्रा, साजन मिश्रा, गुंदेजा पंडित और भजन सपूरी साहब, या जो प्रोग्राम में ब्रॉडकास्ट करने वाली जो एक बहुत ही स्वीट वॉइस आप लोग सुनते होंगे on 15th August, रितु राजपूत, I think she is in the panel also, and Jainendra sir, Jainendra Singh. So I have come across all these people since my childhood and now also.
I know आप एक government organization के साथ हैं. I don't want to put you in the spot, but I am notorious for my controversial questions. थोड़ा सा ज़रूर पूछूंगी. So when you did come into All India Radio, क्या आपको एक difference महसूस होता है between women leadership and male-oriented leadership? Is there a difference when it comes to how do you empathize with issues, with subjects? किस तरह के आप lens से एक issue को cover करें?
Yes. I think women leadership is more aggressive.
Aggressive?
Yeah, towards the issues concerned to women. अब ये जैसे कि आपने पहले ही mention कर दिया है कि because women know they are deprived at many fronts. So when they actually get an opportunity to show what they think and their attitude is, so they show it in action. वो बहुत ही ज़्यादा एक चीज़ पे बारीकी से ध्यान करके, because despite of lot of development and gender equality moving towards positive direction, we see there is a bit difference in representation of women in every organization as well as in All India Radio also. But here, when I see there is a drastic change from maybe 1960s, 70s, there were less women. When I was recruited 2013, 2015, when I actually joined Akashvani Gwalior, 70% people whom I could see around were women. Security guards were obviously male. Casual presenters, radio presenters, and radio jockeys, all were women. So I was like, okay, there are no men announcers. Male announcers nahi hote, women hi hote yahan pe. But then I came across some people who were very senior, and they were male announcers also. And then when I came back to Delhi, okay, I saw, okay, there is a vast number of male against few
Okay.
leadership role in women.
You know, I like that she used the word aggressive, because वो हम काफी बारी कहते हैं ना कि when a man asks for his due, he's looked upon as ambitious, women are looked upon as aggressive, but aggressive is actually a good word. Let's normalize aggression for women when it comes to, of course, having their impact on issues related to women and the larger gender issues as well. Olya, kept you waiting. Tell me, you know, because we've also seen the evolution of radio right from the, and it's interesting to see that actually 30s, 40s, 50s is when we did see a massive impact of women behind the scenes too, not just on air. Perhaps there was a certain decline in the period afterwards, but it's been on the incline again. How has it impacted your worldview when it comes to, because we do see, you know, the evolution of feminism, the spread of feminism coming in, that worldview being shaped a lot through the radio programming, through the formats that were used?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the question. It's a very big question. We could sit here all day talking about it, of course. But thank you, Archana, for making this happen. So I represent ABU, it's Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union, and I'm the head of radio. And we've got 246 members across the entire Asia Pacific. And I'm talking about from Turkey, Russia, all the way through all of the Central Asia, India, you know, the rest of Asia, Southeast Asia, right down to Australia, New Zealand, and the Pacific. We have 17 members in the Pacific. So when I look across the vast Asia Pacific area, there is a huge absence of women almost everywhere. It's very easy for us to point to women, say, look, there's a woman there, because there's so few of them, they're so easy to remember, because there's maybe 5 or 6. And in fact, there are women everywhere, but they tend to be in the very high positions in places where, for example, commercial radio, because they head those stations. So you practically have to buy your own station to become a CEO of radio in some countries. And I'm talking broad brush here, you know, not as specifics, but it is still very difficult for women to progress, and it's different in different countries. So, for example, in the Pacific, and like it is here, many women come through in Australia and New Zealand. Many women come through it, and they are all in journalistic jobs, they're broadcasters, and then somehow they disappear through the reproductive years, they disappear. And many of them don't reappear because of financial, cultural, other reasons. So the question of women's leadership, because once you disappear from that, you don't tend to move up. When you re-enter the workforce, you don't re-enter in a job that's CEO. You know, you have to go back, and then you have to reestablish your career again. So like I said, there are many factors to do with that. So, I mean, how do we get through that? I mean, it's not just a policy of, oh, let's push women through. There needs to be a gender policy at government levels. There needs to be a gender policy at workplace level. And we have to go back to counting. I know it's boring, and I used to be one of those people who used to laugh at that and say, oh, come on, you know, like maybe it's time we can just, you know, get people there because they're really good at the jobs. No, when you stop counting, it doesn't happen anymore. Women disappear. Okay, so you have to be very aware of what's happening. And then when you get to very high levels, at the CEO levels, particularly in the public service, there are very few women there. Very few women. There are women that are being appointed as because of things they did in their lives, in their other sort of professional lives. So they get appointed to boards, and they get appointed to sort of honorific positions. But by and large, what I see, there is an absence of women almost at every level of production and whatever. I mean, it's all very well to say that, yes, there are many women doing many radio programs for women. Why shouldn't there be? who, you know, like, and it's, why shouldn't there be men doing those programs? Why are women only doing those programs? But, you know, where are the women in sport? Where are the women that are doing finance reporting? Where are the economists? Where are the techies? You know, and like it's no longer the case that you have to lug around all this stuff. You know, that's all you need to produce a radio. Where are the techies who are women? So I'm not accusing anybody. I'm just saying that when we look at these things, don't just look at, oh, there's 5 women I can name off the top of my head that are really good. Yes, try to get 10. You know, try getting beyond 5. And there are so many men in those positions that you kind of lose count. You could go on for the rest of the day. And again, I'm not putting one against the other. I'm just saying reality across the board. When I look at countries that are richer, poorer, you know, huge GDPs, not so huge, you know, it's all the same. When it comes to women, it doesn't change much. Okay, so that, and in fact, I think it has gone backwards a lot because we stopped counting, because we rested on our laurels, because we said, oh, you know, I'm the head of radio now, and I'm a woman, so, you know, good on me. You know, and what about the rest of the people coming through? What about your generation? What about other generations coming through? Workplaces are very different now, so all of that has to be constantly looked at.
Let me get a Nisha on that, in fact, you know, Nisha, because you're seeing it from the top, from the inside, when it comes to these kind of policies here. Do you see some of them in the making, or some of the policies that you are making internally to ensure that it's not just about these 3-4 celebrity women anchors on air, or you yourself as a CEO, but, you know, the very crucial point that especially after childbirth, women losing so much of, you know, taking that career break during their pregnancies. And there are different phases in their life where they actually tend to lose out on years of hard work. How do you correct that?
No, I totally agree with the point. I think it's a conscious decision. There will be times when pregnancy leaves are taken, and sometimes they take as much as 1.5 years to come back. And we protect that position, keep it vacant, and have somebody else double up just so that that position is vacant enough for her to come back. I think that's a very conscious decision. Until you don't really make that extra effort, it will not happen. Because the tendency for us is to just fill in vacant positions at the earliest. But that being said, I think it is so important to have women at leadership positions. So while radio has an immense amount of anonymity, and that is why a lot of women love to come on radio because of the ability of being anonymous there and still be successful, it is also important to have a lot of women in leadership positions. I'm not saying it because I work for Red FM, but I'm happy that at Red FM, a lot of senior positions are led by women in various departments, be it sales, be it marketing. It's not just an RJ being a female, but we have a lot of other departments, whether it is marketing, whether it is sales, and sales is out there. It's out there and shaking hands and kissing babies. So we have a lot of women who are leading departments, and I think it's important to kind of empower women with more leadership, and that is when the aggression will come through. That is when I think you can move forward, because at least they learn how to take risks and move forward. That's been something we've been doing it for the last 18 years at Red FM for me, so that's worked for us. Annurag, you want to say something?
Yeah, Smita, with your permission. Yeah, sure. First of all, I'm representing Red FM on the panel. I disagree with Miss Olya Booyar. I don't think what you said applies to India in the same proportion it applies to every. I think in India, we still have a long way to go in our rural, semi-urban India. But things have changed.
But isn't that the larger India?
Pardon me?
Isn't that the larger India? The rural and the semi-India that we are talking about?
I think things are changing there also. And you know, I watched this movie called Ocean's 11. How many of you watched it? Right? And how many of you watched the Ocean 8? Right? And who were the protagonists? Women. From Ocean's 11. So I think the world has changed. Again, you can argue that America still not has had a women president, right? And you can argue. But today morning also, here at this forum, Ms. Vasudha Gupta, she's the Principal Director General of All India Radio. She's a woman. Of course, these are bureaucrats who've grown through the ranks. Ms. Nirja Shekhar, she spoke. She's the Additional Secretary. So in India, I think things can always be better. But in my view, they're okay. They're not like elsewhere.
No, Annurag, I disagree.
You
They
can make that-
cannot always be better. They
Yeah,
have to be
you can
better.
disagree. There's okay,
Because
there's no
3
problem.
out of 10 is not a great score that we are looking at, especially when you compare to the population of the country and the share of women. The moment you accept it as okay, I think that's what Olya was pointing out to, that's
it's
where the
not.
problem lies.
No, but I just want to correct her view that in India it's not comparable to elsewhere. I'm not saying in India we don't need to improve, but it's not like the way it is in the world. So that's the point I want to. I also spoke at your ABU Radio Forum 2013 and again 2013 or 12, wherever it was in Vietnam, in Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh, one of the cities.
Okay,
Though there also it was being discussed. The same things have been said, but in India things have moved. Second, because it's a radio forum, and for 40 years people have been talking about the demise of the radio and the death of the radio star, and it hasn't happened. Because radio has kept pace. I just want to say that when today radio is becoming digital audio broadcasting, not just radio, podcasting is one. I mean, there is a platform called Array Voice, which is a podcasting or a audio medium just for women. And there are many others I know of. So in India, there are mediums that are for women, by women.
Okay.
The founder and the co-founder are one man and one woman. But I don't think you just need women, as she rightly said, to articulate women's issues. There are enough issues that are taken up by male radio jockeys, which are
Okay,
about
let me
women.
take that question. I hear you, what you're trying to say, that of course, not the progress cannot be negated and we should not. And I'll take a question from Gunjan, but if anybody has a question in the audience, please raise your hand, ताकि हम एक दो सवाल ले सके. मुझे पता है we are standing between you and lunch, but I do want to have you engaged, क्योंकि आप लोग दूर से आए हैं, तो अपने हाथ खड़े कर ले अगर सवाल हो. जो अनुराग कह रहे थे कि ये भी तो नहीं एक्सपेक्टेशन होनी चाहिए कि जब आप एक जेंडर लेंस डालते हैं तो वो सिर्फ विमेन ही जो है उनको लेकर आगे बढ़ा सकें. लेकिन इस मसले पर आपको लगता है कि आपकी रेडियो की तरफ से कौन से ऐसे मुद्दे हैं व्हेन इट कम्स टू विमेन, LGBTQI+ कम्युनिटी, जिनको लेकर आप लोग सेंसिटिव इश्यूज, टैबू इश्यूज जो शायद सोसाइटी पे आमतौर पे नहीं डिस्कस हो पा रहे हैं, उसके लिए सेफ स्पेस दे पा रहे हैं? आपको लग रहा है उस और कुछ काम कर पा रहे हैं आपके रेडियोज कंपेयर टू पहले के कंपैरिजन में जो आज ज़्यादा हो?
सुप्रीम कोर्ट की रिसेंट गाइडलाइंस के बाद क्योंकि हमें हमारा जो एज अ पब्लिक सर्विस ब्रॉडकास्टर वी फॉलो whatever happens in the government, the new developments. So Supreme Court guidelines के बाद हम लोगों ने थोड़ा सा theme change ज़रूर किया, and gender equality has always been a main theme in the women's programs and other programs also, like related to agriculture, farm and home, and family welfare programs. But regarding LGBTQ, since it is very sensitive issue, and we cater to, we boast to cater to 99.9% population and the area in the country. So yes, we are taking it slowly, and the way as it can be digested by the entire population.
Digested by is not the word I would go by, really. It's...
Yeah, because
I
it is a
understand that as a
sensitive
public
issue,
broadcaster, there is an alignment that it happens with what the government or the larger part of society does. But I think, is there any question here at this point in time? फिर मुझे accuse मत कीजिएगा कि मैंने questions नहीं लिए थे. Chale, if you can just raise your hand, I'll go to you. But Olya, coming to you, because even in 1934, if we are looking at BBC, Olive Shapley, and looking at the Manchester depression situation, and Oliver would actually say that, look, the aim was basically to get the real people talking. Does it really help through a medium like radio to get the real people talking when it comes to gender-related issues, when it comes to gender equality?
Well, of course it does. You have to see yourself, hear yourself, to be able to realize yourself. If somebody's talking to you that doesn't sound like you, doesn't look like you, how are you going to believe that you're going to be able to do whatever you want? And this is what I'm talking about when I say, like, right across the board, not just special programs for women by women, but all programs. There shouldn't be, we have to have a woman here. We actually have to think about the fact that, so many panels, even at ABU, we have lots of fights over this. We have a massive conference and we have a panel of all men, and we say, oh, really? This is like 2024 now, and we have a manel, not a panel, you know, one after another. And don't tell me that there's not women there. I mean, and, you know, my colleague here is saying that it's different in India. I can tell you, I've been working at ABU for 11 years. There's only been one woman DG in Prasar Bharati, and she was there for 2 years and she was moved on. One. Okay, so I can see, I understand there's lots of DGs. There's, yeah, no, I'm talking about CEO. Oh, because
Right now, the current
Annurag,
no, you're being very nice here and being very patient with us. I do know that, but you know the fact remains that when we are talking about the DGs, for example, in or additional DGs, there are so many acronyms in All India Radio. I lose myself sometimes. But like to say that, you know, there were 3 here this morning, but I mean, you know, there's probably about 50, at least, in All India Radio, in across the board, because there's so many. It's one of the things that India is famous for is the hierarchical levels. It's only, I think, second to probably China and Japan, who also have very hierarchical. Japan, you know, China is a little bit better, but Japan and Korea, there's almost no women at higher levels. And we're only here talking about India because we're here, but you know, if you look at
you're adding a
across the
global
board,
perspective
it's
too, of course.
Huge. They're huge issues. So the thing is that women need to see themselves, whether it is at a broadcaster level, at a programming level, at a leadership level, at the CEO level. If you don't see that there's a woman there somewhere, you will never apply for that job, because you know what you're going to face. So you're going to go somewhere else. You're going to go into a business role. You're going to go into commercial role, because you can create your own success much easier there. So, and that continues to be the problem. So the answer to your question is yes, it does matter. And yes, we do need to keep looking at that and keep talking about it and seeing where it's going.
Nisha, when you look at the industry and the consumer sizes, so how much of it is actually driven by women when it comes to the consumer households for you? If you want to speak about your own radio station, and does that get reflected when it comes to ensuring, the issues that are being raised by Olya out here of making the level playing field for women out there in the industry? I know Annurag named 3 of you as CEOs, but it's 3 out of 10. Is it still very difficult?
3 out of 36.
36, sorry. 3 out of 36. There you have it, Annurag. So, do the maths, and does it really sort of help you?
Okay, so I think we don't program for women alone, right? As a business head, as a brand, as Red FM, as Bajate Raho, our audience is largely male. We call ourselves Bajate Raho. We're very tongue-in-cheek. We're a provocative entertainer. So if you actually look at our audience, it's more male-dominated. So that's at a listenership level. From an advertising level, I think, again, it is completely gender neutral in the sense that from automobile to telecom to the BFSI sector, everybody advertises on radio. So I don't think there is too much of a gender play as far as advertising is concerned on radio. However, any women-specific programs that we do on Women's Day to multiple shows that we may do, or as Annurag said, in the afternoons, there are a lot of women's shows. Yes, we do women-specific. We do get women-specific advertisers. It does happen. But then, by far, radio, I think, is gender neutral from an advertising point of view and from a listenership point of view. Maybe another radio station have more female listeners purely by who they stand for and what their branding is and what their tagline is. We, as Bajate Raho, has a little more male skew. And it's interesting to have more women drive that listenership for men.
But when you look at some of the other, in fact, private FM players who may be catering to more gender-sensitive topics, do you think that gets skewed? टीवी में हम काफ़ी बारी देखते हैं, आप एक सीरियस डॉक्यूमेंट्री कर लीजिए, 200 लोग आपकी डॉक्यूमेंट्री को नहीं देखेंगे यूट्यूब पर. आप अभी मंदिर मस्जिद का डिबेट कर लीजिए, आपको 1 लाख लोग 1 घंटे के अंदर आपके इस शो को देख लेंगे. So when it comes to your radio programming, does it matter that if you are picking up more sensitive topics, gender taboo topics, it actually impacts the listenership?
Of course it does. I'm saying there's a huge listenership that does come in, and there's a huge response.
Comes in or goes away?
No, comes in. There are a lot of people calling in to respond to that topic, to debate on that topic, especially if you do take something which is very women-centric. For an example, I think there was this case in point, I think we did it a few months ago, where there was this lady, e-rickshaw, which we were driving. I don't know, what was it called, Aarti? Stree rickshaw. And there was this lady, she had just delivered a baby, and she was really struggling to earn a living. And we did this whole activity where we asked listeners to chip in, and we all bought her an e-rickshaw, which she could drive for herself. So she tied the baby on her stomach with her dupatta and she started driving. I think it was just so incredible, and Delhi just warmed up to her, and there was a huge response. So every time we do take up women-led issues, of course the listenership goes up immensely. There are a lot of women and men. Let's not alienate men. There are a lot of men who support women and their work they do. So I'm saying there's a lot of response that comes in. But by virtue of what the brand stands for, sometimes it's not possible to do enough and more of that. But when we do, there's a huge response always.
And I do want to...
Can I
Yes,
jump in
sure,
just
yeah.
one quickly and say that the one industry that has actually done very, very well in pivoting towards women is advertising. Because across the board, wherever you are in the world, and again, I'm generalizing, but women spend the money, or they're at least in charge of the household money, what gets spent and where. So the advertisers have pivoted in a big way towards women consumers, in not so much as targeting women, but not alienating women, whether it's in cars or whatever else. I mean, when you go buying a car these days, the car salesman will talk to the woman, not the man. It doesn't matter who's got the money, because if the woman's not happy, the car doesn't get bought. And the advertisers really caught on to that very quickly. So it's really an interesting kind of case study to look at. So even though, it's not targeted, but it is actually, it's not by targeting at women so much as not alienating 51% of the population, and suddenly the revenues go up. So it's a good story.
So just to add to that, I think for us, in the Indian scenario, by virtue of policy and regulatory matters, where most of the commercial radio stations are all youth-centric. So the advertising is more youth-led than really women-centric or male-centric. I mean, most of us play current music, or most of us are catering to the audience of 25 to 35 age group. I would still call them youth, and they are. And I'm saying, so most of the advertising is catered to that. So therefore, you don't really see too much of a skew there. In fact, there was one radio station, commercial radio station, called Meow FM. I don't know how many of you would remember that. Somebody did a very brave thing to kind of launch an all-women's radio station called Meow, but there weren't many advertisers. So in a year or two, they had to shut down and rebrand themselves into another radio station. So unless there's not enough advertising support or listener support, it's difficult to survive in this market, which is very, very skewed and also biased in many ways.
I do understand. Annurag, final comment on what Nisha was saying. How do you bring in that support for these brave attempts to actually survive for the longest story?
See, first of all, radio is a mass medium, right? So numbers do count. Of course, there are community radio plays, which are niche or region specific, then they're differentiated. And with digital audio broadcasting, you can do domain specific, very specialized. So I think it allows you now, if you can go to a level where people are fanatic cult of that radio programming, they pay $1 or more than $1, and it attracts a certain kind of advertising. Now in India, audio is also playing a significant role in women's upliftment, and by doing programming which is education and literacy oriented, access to information, because in many parts of the world, women may have limited access to written materials due to cultural or socio-economic barriers. And as I said, audio content is in the language. And now with artificial intelligence, you can produce it in one language and it can become video, audio in every other language. The empowerment through storytelling, Nisha alluded to that point, that women come to radio because of their anonymity. Audio platforms can serve as a powerful woman to share their stories, because radio is two-way. Now, India is changing. Women are seeking more and more employment. So skill development and entrepreneurship is an area which has become a theme in radio stations. The other, mental wealth and well-being. Radio is known to be a medium that can give content, and is giving content on meditation, relaxation. When women are pregnant, programming which helps them go through that journey. And
Right.
last but not the least is advocacy and awareness. Audio campaigns and public service announcements related to schemes that oriented towards women, radio is a big disseminator. So in India, radio is doing its role. And I must tell you that we do 300 conferences between Exchange for Media and Businessworld, whether it's our juries, whether it's our panels, we try to get to 50-50, but I can safely say we'll be between 30 to 40%. I wouldn't even go out of the 30 editors that we have of various products, 27 are women. So I don't think I've chosen them because they're women. They naturally, there is enough talent in women in India. Yes, but more sensitization to be able to have more women mentoring other women to grow is needed.
Thank you. Thanks, Anurag. At least, just as a conclusion, Gunjan, is there any show that you've conceived जो आपको लगता है कि आने वाले दिनों में from a gender perspective जो आप करना चाहेंगी या जो होना चाहिए?
Yes, I just wanted to point out also about advertisement when ma'am was talking. In terms of advertisement, which we get in All India Radio, I think the theme of advertisement is female-oriented and dominated.
Sorry, we can't hear. Mic closer कर लिया. Mic on है आप.
Okay. So, like not actually 100% of the advertisement we get in target audience program related to women. Advertisement is for women and represented by women mostly. And also in other programs like related to health and welfare of women and gender equality, women-related advertisement come to us. Yes, in the sales and marketing department, we have less women. Representation of women is less. But I think target audience is mostly women, either it be beauty and cosmetic product or health-related products. So, women lead it.
Nobody can work in isolation. But thank you so much. I believe I'm standing now between you and lunch. And I think gender in radio is really not just about counting कि कितने CEOs हो गए, कितने women RJs हो गए. Right from the way and the time that radio has evolved, it's really about how much of those issues you can raise through radio, how much of a space you can create for women to join in the workforce, both on air, off air, and how do you really make sure that a mass medium that I still think is the strongest when it comes to informing, educating, creating awareness is used to its best potential for topics that must be raised, that is gender neutral and gender equal as well. Many thank you so much for joining us here.